Washington Nationals, Atlanta Braves, Philadelphia Phillies, New York Mets, and Miami Marlins. We've got some high expectation and probably going to have high result teams. We've got teams with middle tier expectations hoping for high results. And we've got teams with low expectations that could get high results. The bottom line is the National League East is probably maybe one of the most talented divisions, young, talented divisions. I would argue in Major League Baseball. I mean, the poster boys I ended up going with and choosing for each one of these teams. You've got C.J. Abrams in Washington, D.C., Acuna on the Braves, and the Braves are just so loaded and so stacked. It's unbelievable. Harper with the Phillies. That team's loaded up with just confidence and team chemistry and relatively young guys. I mean, I know Harper's early 30s now. Trey Turner's early 30s. Castellanos, Real Muto, I get it. They're loaded. The New York Mets trending in a much younger direction after having traded away Verlander and Scherzer last year after a wildly disappointing season. And then you got the Miami Marlins, who are just historically a very young and unproven team. Have been for many, many years now. Have had a couple of changes up front, but ultimately, they played really well last year. So I would argue there's 4 teams in this division that are planning on and hoping to get into the postseason. I mean, the Nationals, we'll see, right? Young core, lots to look forward to, but this is going to be a competitive division. This is going to be a division that's going to have a lot of playoff implications, a lot of impact on postseason outcomes. And without further ado, we're going to dive straight into it. It's National League East 2024 predictions in Major League Baseball. Let's go. 5th place team. No one's surprised here, but I got the Washington Nationals. They've got a projected win total this upcoming season, 66.5, right? It's understandable. It's not the end of the world. They've been rebuilding. They traded away everybody. I mean, like everybody in a span of 2 or 3 years. Soto, Scherzer, Trey Turner. I'm missing a bunch of guys. Zimmerman retired. I mean, if you look at that World Series team, when they won the World Series now going to be 5 years ago, in 2019, you look at that squad. Trey Turner at short, he's gone. Rendon at third, he's gone. Zimmerman retired. Strasburg officially retired, but not. I don't know. Patrick Corbin washed. Scherzer traded. Soto traded. It's crazy. And yeah, you know what? It does suck, right? If you're a Nationals fan. Well, last year they went 71-91, and that's obviously not good, but that's also not the worst thing ever. And it's kind of that record that you would like to see if you're a Nationals fan. And what I mean by that is you got those other teams that you'd probably put in the same category as the Nationals. You got like Kansas City, you got the Rockies, where it's like, okay, yeah, building their way up, young and controllable, not a lot of big league experience hanging around the roster. But then you look at those other teams' records and they're like 60 and 102, or they're 55 and 107, like brutal, absolutely brutal, losing 100 games. Nationals, 71-91. It's like something I can work with, right? It's not the worst thing I've ever seen in my entire life. And even more so, the reason that I feel that way and it stands true is because this organization, when they did tear it all down, they did it. My God, did they do it the right way? I mean, the guys they got back in some of these trades, crazy. And we'll get into that. Their World Series odds are plus 25,000. So you bet $100, you win 25 grand if they win it all. Not going to happen. It's fine. I've got 2 players listed as players to watch for the Washington Nationals, and I've done 2 players for every single team. I wish I could have done more for the Nationals. I wish I could have done 7 players to watch. I guess theoretically nothing stopped me from doing that, and I could have, but I wanted to keep it uniform and make sure every team's got 2 guys to watch in particular, not to also like overwhelm people and be like, hey, Nationals fans, watch for C.J. Abrams and Mackenzie Gore and Robert Hassel and this, and it's like there's a ton of dudes. More so, you're probably wondering, why do you know all these guys, Ryan? Why do you know half of the Nationals farm system? Well, that's because those were former Padres guys. We traded them, we being Padres. I'm not a part of the Padres organization, right? I like to think I am, based on how much it affects my mood. That's neither here nor there. The Padres got Juan Soto and Josh Bell in that trade a couple years ago. And they gave up a bunch of dudes, including Mackenzie Gore, C.J. Abrams, Robert Hassel, and a name that I have listed here as a player to watch. That is James Wood. So James Wood is like a created player in like a video game, like MLB The Show. He's a 6'7" outfield prospect, ETA of this season for the Nationals. I'm assuming could be towards the end of the year. Maybe he makes the opening day roster. I don't know. Regardless, This dude is just a StatCast nightmare. He's fast. He has a big arm. He plays outfield, left-handed hitting. He hits the ball so hard, and he was the cornerstone piece, whether anybody would claim it or not. He was the cornerstone piece in return in the Juan Soto trade. And I don't say that as hindsight, like, oh, looking back, he's going to end up being the best guy. No, the Nationals said, we won't do this trade unless you include James Wood. That's how highly touted this guy was and how good he is, how good he's going to be. I mean, these guys are, professionals and executives in Major League Baseball for a reason, because they're able to evaluate talent and use the tools at their disposal to recognize the talent from a guy like James Wood. James Wood's a guy to watch. He's going to be up, I would assume, this year. I mean, maybe they don't for control, club control reasons, meaning like the Nationals want to hold on to him for longer. I don't know, but I can tell you James Wood's a monster, and he's going to be a monster. The other guy to watch for is, I have listed here, is Dylan Cruz. This one's a little more obvious just in terms of him going, I believe, number 2 overall last season out of LSU. Outfielder, great hitting tool, fast, athletic. He again, ETA of this season might be a bit of a stretch. And I'm going based off the ETAs listed on the web on MajorLeagueBaseball.com. So could be off on both of these guys, but ultimately I wouldn't be shocked to see one, both, or neither up this year. I know that sounds vague and like non-descriptive, but I think both these guys are going to be big pieces for the Nationals in the rebuild that they're going to try to go for. So ultimately 71 and 91 last year, 66.5 for the win total this year. I've got him at 70 and 92. So that's it's a game worse than last year. It's 5th place in the NL East, and it's not a dig. I don't think anyone takes it that way. There's still a long way to go. They still need a bunch of pieces. I mean, they've got, and it's enough guys to win 70 games. If we walk out of 2024 and the Nationals win 75 to 80 games, which isn't super likely, but if they did, I wouldn't be that shocked because they just have dudes, like I said. So they're all young, right? They're all impressionable and lack, you could say, experience. But I mentioned some of the other guys I could have listed as players to watch that were all up last year for them and got some just really significant and regular big league playing time. CJ Abrams, Josiah Gray, Mackenzie Gore, like these guys are going to be around for a while, and they got a full year out of their belt last year and didn't play that bad. And I like Dave Martinez, their manager. So we'll see what happens with the Nats this year. I've got them in 5th place. Not the end of the world. Nats fans, you got a lot to look forward to. I'd tune in every night if I was one of those guys, especially if they're calling up these dudes left and right. So we'll see what happens. 4th place team, we've got the Miami Marlins. You lose Sandy Alcantara like right away. That's a problem, right? It's a problem. No question about it. Their projected win total for this season is 77.5. It's not high. It's not good. It's not the worst thing I've ever seen, but that's just very like middle tier type. I have their record listed here from last season at 84 and 78. And you'd see that and go, wow, pretty good. And what happened? I know they lost Sandy Alcantara, losing him. I think if I haven't clarified that, he's got Tommy John. And so he's out. 84 and 78 last year, win total this year of 77.5. And you're thinking, well, yeah, they lost Sandy Alcantara, but 7 games worse? Like what happened? Under their last season record, 84 and 78, I put their run differential. And I did that because it's important. Their run differential last year was minus 57, meaning their opponents outscored them by 57 runs total during the season. What does that mean? Honestly, the best way you can put it, and it's not an attempt to take away from what they accomplished, because ultimately the only thing that matters is record and what the scores were. But what that means is they won a ton, almost every close 2 to 1 run game. They won pretty much all of them, or most. And then the games they lost, they got blown out. And what that shows me and what that tells me is they kind of just got a little bit lucky last year. Doesn't mean they're a bad team. It doesn't mean they're frauds, like all that stuff. They just got lucky last year. And that is important to include, because when we're doing projections and predictions, like that includes, like the averages, like not really taking into consideration just luck. But luck is a real thing. And situationally, like things can happen and that could change a whole game. And then that's a win. And then that happens 5 more times. And that's 5 games you won instead of lost. Like, a lot of things can happen, but they got kind of lucky last year. It's not the end of the world. They're also just kind of a middle tier team. That's just what they are. It's what they're going to be. The World Series odds are plus 9,000, but they do have some young guys to look forward to. First guy I would say to keep an eye out to watch for is Max Meyer, right-handed pitching prospect. He's going to be up. I think he may have been up last year briefly, but regardless, he's a guy the Marlins, like, they want him to be a big part of the rotation. He's probably going to have to step up and have a bigger role than maybe anticipated, like after last season or before the injury to Sandy Alcantara. But now we sit here and Max Meyer is going to be a guy. He's going to be one of those guys for them that's like, call him up. Here we go. Let's go. Get in the rotation. Big time arm. Going to be good. The other guy I have listed here, players to watch, Jesus Luzardo, left-handed starting pitcher. Guy's been in the league for like 5 years. And he's 26 years old. His stuff is getting better and better and better. Last season, Jesus Luzardo had by far his best professional or at least MLB season of any season he's had so far. He stayed healthy. He logged 200 punch outs. I think he was categorically the leader in terms of the starting rotation for the Marlins. I don't know what you could attribute that to. Maybe he just got more comfortable in Miami. He might even be from, I think he's Stoneman Douglas High School. Regardless, Florida kid, comfortable. And when he's on, like, his stuff is some of the best stuff in baseball. Left-handed arm, 94, 97, like 99s a couple times with sinker, slider. Like, it's pretty electric stuff. Keep an eye on him this year. If all of a sudden we're getting down to like Cy Young voting time, it's like, wait, Jesus Luzardo got third place in Cy Young? Yes, he could. He's got that type of stuff. So keep an eye on him. 84 and 78 last year, 77.5 projected wins for them this year. I've got him at 77 and 85, right at the projected win total. That's fourth place, middle last tier team. No offense, Marlins, but it's like, don't expect anything more than that. Third place in the National League Eastern Division, New York Mets. Meet the Mets, meet the Mets. 80.5 is their win total this season. Projected win total, 80.5. Last year, 75 and 87. Woof, woof. Number one payroll by a gigantic margin. And they went 75 and 87. I don't care who you've got on this year's team. I don't care who you acquired. I don't care who you got rid of. I don't care how you restructured it. If you're the number one payroll team and you have a year like the Mets did last year, it is going to have lasting and lingering side effects. It's going to carry over this year. Not in a horrendous way, but for them last year to have a projected win total, I think in the mid 90s, to drop teen games and projected win total over the course of 1 year. Woof. World Series odds plus 5,000. The good news is Mets fans or people curious about the New York Mets, they had to do a lot last year at the deadline, and they did. They traded away Max Scherzer. They traded away Justin Verlander. And when they did that, they acquired some dudes, like dudes. Two outfield prospects in particular. One, Drew Gilbert, outfield prospect out of the University of Tennessee. I believe he was coming back. He came back from the Astros in the Verlander deal. Outfield prospect, great hit tool, little smaller guy, but stack house, great back control, was a big time player in college, ETA of this year, young, controllable, electric, cheaper, right? And I say cheaper because it's important for the Mets. Like I said, coming off the number one payroll last year, you're going to have to find ways to get some value in other areas. And in the case of Drew Gilbert and the Mets, that's what it's going to be. The other guy to look out for, Ronald Acuna Jr.'s brother, Luis Angel Acuna, also another outfield prospect. He came back from the Rangers when the Mets sent Max Scherzer over there. Also has an ETA of this season. Also an outfield prospect. I think Drew Gilbert and Luis Angel Acuna could be like the corner guy for the Mets because they've got Nimmo in center. I mean, there's nothing wrong with having a young, athletic, controllable, aggregately speaking, affordable outfield. I know they signed Nimmo to a big monster deal, but it's like, well, if Acuna and Gilbert are making league minimum in the corners, then that outfield's costing you, $25 million a year. It's like, it's not that bad. Those guys have high upsides. Drew Gilbert and Luis Angel Acuna. Keep an eye out for both of those guys. 75 and 87. That's their record last year. 80.5. That's their win total this year. I've got them at 82 and 80. That's 2 games above 500. That is, I guess it's an improvement from last year. just from an overall perspective, I just don't think there's enough there with this roster, with this team to make a push for the postseason. That doesn't mean they're bad. 82-80 is not a bad record. They still got the pieces with Alonso. They still got the pieces with Lindor. Like I said, with Nimmo, but the starting pitching is a huge concern. The bullpen is okay. Obviously, it's capped by Edwin Diaz, who's a stud. To have Scherzer, Verlander, and now this year it's David Peters. It's a bunch of 4 starters, 3 and 4 starters in the rotation. We'll see what happens. But 82-80, I think, is more than fair for the New York Mets in 2024. We'll see if they can exceed that. But ultimately, I don't think they find themselves in the playoffs come October. Second place in the National League East, Philadelphia Phillies. I don't think I've ever seen a Major League Baseball team over the course of 2 seasons, meaning 2022 and then carry over into last year, 2023, where there's been a collection of players that has just exceeded any other team in terms of vibes, team chemistry. The Phillies as a whole team are so perfectly assembled, like in terms of personalities and contributions. And then like come playoff time, these guys just elevate their game. I mean, they just do. Kyle Schwarber goes ballistic every time the playoffs the calendar flips to October. Bryce Harper goes ballistic in the playoffs. Trey Turner went off last year. Nick Castellanos went off last year. Rio Muto looked good. Like all these guys are really good in the regular season. Come time for the playoffs, these dudes are unbelievable. They re-signed Zach Wheeler, or I think signed him to extension. They still got Aaron Nola. They still got Ranger Suarez, Christopher Sanchez. Back end of the bullpen is fine. They got nothing but hitters, 1 through 9. They went 90-72 last year. That's a really good record. Their projected win total is 89.5, right at the same thing. World Series odds are plus 1,500. But I've got 2 guys for you to look out for on this team. Number 1, Mick Abel's a right-handed pitching prospect for them. His ETAs this season, he'll probably be up at some point, helping this team out, contributing. We'll see where he slides in. Because sometimes they slide a guy that was a starter in the minor leagues. They call him up and then they put him in the bullpen. So I'm not entirely sure with Mick Abel. The other guy to watch out for, Whit Merrifield. Whit Merrifield's on the Phillies. That's huge. Huge depth piece. Like Whit Merrifield is an all-star. Whit Merrifield is a great player. He's had a couple of down years, had a couple of fluky situations go on. Now the Phillies infield is full. I mean, you've got Harper at first, Bohm at third, Trey Turner at short, Bryson Stott at second. So I'm not exactly sure where he's going to slide in. Gives a lot of people a lot of opportunities to DH, slide Whit Merrifield anywhere in the infield. You could probably play corner outfield too at any moment. So it's a guy to watch for. And then especially if somebody goes down, Whit Merrifield's going to slide right in. And that's huge. It's huge to have a depth piece like that who's a reliable guy who can go out, hit 270 plus, hit him 7-hole, and he'll be there. So Whit Merrifield and the Phillies, keep an eye out for him. 90-72 last year, 89.5 win total this year. I've got him 89-73, game lower, but that's good enough, by the way, for first place in the wild card. That's second place in the National League East, but that's good enough for first place in the wild. So keep an eye out for the Phils. Go Phils, go. Just love everything about the vibes that always come from this team, or at least have came from this team over the last couple of years. First place team, National League East, not going to shock anybody, Atlanta Braves. I mean, it's a joke. I've had some content and stuff in the past gain some traction and hit the algorithms pretty well on social media talking about this Braves team and how absolutely juiced they are. I mean, it's kind of crazy that they were able to assemble a roster that's so juiced. Like in terms of all-star caliber hitters in their lineup, not all-star caliber. I mean, these are guys that were on the all-star team in the last 2 years. Austin Riley at third, Orlando Arcia at short, Ozzie Albies at second, Matt Olson at first, Acuna in the outfield, Sean Murphy at catcher, Michael Harris in center. Like, oh my God, all those guys are all-stars. Like, what do you do, right? It's crazy. They have good starting pitching, of course. You got Fried, you got Kyle Wright as an option, you got Ian Anderson, you've got a lot of other guys, and then they also traded for Chris Sale. Chris Sale's like coming off of down-ish portion of his career with the Red Sox. He's got a big contract. The Red Sox didn't want it anymore. They traded him away. If anybody's going to flip Chris Sale around, it's going to be the Braves. Right. I mean, it's just like he's probably going to show up this year. And if he can stay healthy, everyone knows who Chris Sale is. So if that's a big piece they can get out of the rotation, I mean, what the hell? It's just like insane. They won 104-58 last year. That's crazy. What's even crazier is that the Braves every single year, besides 2021, Obviously, they won it all. Good for them. They should have. They deserved it. The following 2 years, 2022 and last season, they were in the years they won the World Series. And both years, they played the Phillies in the first round of the playoffs. And both years, the Phillies roasted them. So it's weird to see. I know the baseball playoffs are just a different animal, but I'm hoping the Braves can at least make it to the championship series this year. I mean, my God, they're so loaded. 101.5 is their win total for this year. Their World Series odds are plus 450. I believe that's second best behind the Dodgers. Players to watch. Number one, AJ Smith-Shawver is a right-handed starting pitcher, prospect for them, high prospect. I'll probably see him up this year at some point. Yeah, keep an eye out for him. The other guy, I mentioned Chris Sale. Another guy they picked up in a trade that they're trying to just maximize is Jared Kelenic. Jared Kelenic was a big time prospect for the Mariners, and the Braves like, oh yeah, we'll take him. And it's not because I don't think the Mariners had him, wanted him to do well, called him up, maybe put a little too much pressure on him and expectations. He struggled early on. With the Braves, it's like he not only doesn't have to be the guy like he was called up to be in Seattle, but he doesn't even have to be a guy. Like he can just be himself. He can just go up, zero cares, zero worry in the world. Whereas when he got called up with the Mariners, it was like, he's going to be our offensive dude. He's going to be one of our guys. Too much for him. And he struggled early on, and then those struggles just kind of compounded. He could never really slow down the train that was flying down the tracks of him really having a hard time and trying to find at least some levels of regular success. And Mariners shipped him off. Braves picked him up. And now he's going to be hitting 7th, 8th, or 9th in this Braves lineup and probably going to be a stud. So keep an eye out for Jared Kelenic. Really like that acquisition by the Braves because he was a high prospect for a reason, right? I mean, he's a good player. So Jared Kelenic, AJ Smith-Shawver, 104.58 last season for the Braves. 101.5 is their win total. This year, I got him at 99.63. It's obviously a great record. It's first place. Probably good enough to be competing with the Dodgers for that 1 seed. We'll see what happens, right? But those are the two donkeys in the National League, Braves and Dodgers. In the case of the American League East, it's just not realistic to expect anybody to chase down this team based on the talent that they have. I mean, they're just absolutely loaded. It's unbelievable. Like they're so loaded. I actually cannot even believe it with my own eyes and head. So that's the NL East, guys. Final standings when it's all said and done. I'm going to have the Nationals in 5th place at 90-72. I'm going to have the Marlins in 4th, 77-85. The Mets at 82-80 in 3rd. Phillies at 89-73, making the playoffs, but 2nd in the NL East. And the Braves winning the NL East 99-63, winning it by 10 games with teams like the Phillies and Mets in that division, which is crazy. Bananaville. The Braves are so loaded. It's unbelievable. That's the NL East final standings. Nationals in 5th, Marlins in 4th, Mets in 3rd, Phillies in 2nd, Braves in 1st. I think that's going to be exactly how it is. I think that's how it was last year, if I'm not mistaken. So not a ton of changes. Fluctuation might come somewhere 3, 4, 5, but I don't think the top 2 are going to be really challenged for those top 2 spots. That's the NL East.